territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge this territory is home to the Métis settlements and Métis nations of Alberta, Regions 2, 3, and 4 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit, who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement an act of reconciliation to those whose territory we reside on and are visiting today. Can you hear me okay? My name is Chad. I'm an Albertan, born and raised on a farm in the fair county of Wetaskiwin, having moved to Edmonton in 2010. When a neighbor needed help swathing, or even that desperate phone call at 3 a.m. on a chilly April morning to come help with a difficult calving, I grew up going to strawberry tea with my mom at the community hall where the adults would all bring delicious baked goods to share with the community, and we kids would play games outside like who can pull the biggest stick out of the forest. All of the neighbors took turns cutting the grass at the hall and the cemetery, and still do. I was also taught that a good day's work is one that made a difference, and in the case of my klutzy family, usually meant that you're bleeding somehow. I'd look down and say to myself, oh, look at that, I'm bleeding, and I'd have no idea what caused it. All of these values I described are what I think of when someone asks me what it is to be Albertan. I'm Albertan, but I'm also Canadian. You know, Haroon invited every single member of the Legislative Assembly to attend today to speak, even. And yes, every single one. Does anyone see any UCP MLAs around? Really? Not even Brian Jean, Leela here, Rahan Sahni, or Travis Taves, who called the Sovereignty Act a fairy tale just a couple months ago? Do we see them? Huh. What we're seeing today with Premier Danielle Smith is anything but Albertan. The Sovereignty Act is written to give Cabinet unilateral power to change laws. It gives Cabinet the ability to decide whether to follow federal laws and force provincial bodies like municipal governments, health authorities, and school boards to defy federal law. I grew up playing soccer, and what she's doing is like firing the referees and telling the other team that she'll call the game from now on. Sure, if I'm on her team, I'm gonna love that idea. Until you come to recognize how soccer actually works and how the other teams are gonna react. It's like my dad telling me to ignore the rules that my mom has in the house. Don't worry about taking your shoes off, picking up after myself, or putting the dishes in the dishwasher. What she's proposing is not democratic.
Alberta's right now, we all know we're facing a cost of living crisis. Food is getting more expensive, rent is going up, wages are staying down. People are struggling to live in this province. When the legislature came back, people were expecting actual change. People were expecting a government that was ready to govern. What they weren't expecting was a government that introduced a bill that was so undemocratic, yet have no actual plan to actually give people inflation relief, real inflation relief, not paychecks. What we need to see here is we need to see a government. We need a government that is actually going to fight for us. We need a government that is ready to actually have it, and that it can't come. We can't wait till May. Our government right now is focused on Bill 1, which, to be frank, is one of the most undemocratic bills, giving the cabinet unchecked power to effectively change laws. It's ridiculous. And even though Danielle Smith is promising, once again, I don't know about you guys, but I don't trust her promises, to change that, the reality is that should never have been on the table. She Trojan horsed this to be some freedom, to be something standing up to Ottawa, when in reality it was a plan to give her cabinet, to give MLA, her team essentially unchecked power that nobody has seen in years. What we need to see here is we need to see a government that is ready to focus on the real issues of this province. We need to see a government that is ready to deliver for Albertans. Once again, Rachel Notley has introduced Bill 201, which is actually looking at hospital standards right now, which is incredibly important. What we need to see here is we need to see actual changes like that. We need to see better legislation. We need to actually have Danielle Smith scrap this bill, get back to the work of governing this province, and not making us seem like a ridiculous, to be frank, a joke. Because reality speaking, everyone across this country, most politicians, most have condemned this bill. Left, right, no matter where you come from, they're condemning this bill because it's, to be frank, ridiculous. No one wants to fight with Ottawa. Nobody needs it. What we need is we need actual supports for Albertans. Albertans need better. So I'm very thankful and I'm very proud to see so many folks up here today that are ready to fight with us to have that. But what we also need to hear is that, especially even when we go home, this is not the end. Once again, this bill has not passed, and later this week, Danielle Smith has promised to bring in some amendments, which is great to hear. However, at the same time too, what we need is we need this bill to be killed, and we need support for Albertans. So once again, I want to say thank you so much.
Kill the bill!